Hi, it's Simon and Aaron with Assets and Arbitrage. We have the show, Scientific Notation. So I know we promised that to you guys, and here it is.
Okay, so the scientific notation. This is one of a pet peeve of mine. So I had always wanted to do this show, but we had got behind. There were some other shows that we needed to do.
Yeah.
Some certain things were going on, but we found a free time so we can get this one in. Scientific notation. Why is that a pet peeve of mine? Because in this, if you're going to be investing
Yeah.
in Bitcoin or whatever you invest in, a lot of times when you're reading stories and articles, people just haphazardly throw around very large numbers. And to me, the two that bother me the most are a billion and a trillion. Right? They throw these numbers around real loosely. So let's get into scientific notation. We're going to do it book definition and then just break it down to what it is. Okay, so I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with scientific notation from your days in high school and college. But let's get the book definition, right? So scientific notation is a way of expressing numbers that are too large or too small, usually would result in a long string of digits to be conveniently written in decimal form. It may be referred to as other places you might see it as scientific form, standard index form, or standard form in the UK. Okay, this base 10 notation is commonly used by scientists, mathematicians, and engineers, and it is in part because it can simplify certain arithmetic operations on scientific calculators, right? So in scientific notation, non-zero numbers, okay, these are non-zero numbers, are always written in the form, right, of m times 10 raised to the power of n. All right, so if you see that formula, m is a non-zero number between 1 and 10. N is the coefficient or the exponent that it is going to be raised to. So what does that mean? So basically, if you did a very simple form of it, if you had the number 200, it would be 2 times 10 to the second power. That's 200. Simply written, right? Okay. So why is this important? Do you want to say anything about why is this important?
I think it's important because the numbers get so large that when you're doing documentation and presentations and explanations, you need a way of shortening those numbers to where you still have the value and the context of the number. But you don't have 10 trillion zeros. Yes, I use trillion haphazardly the way he hates it. You don't have 10 trillion zeros after the number.
So let's get some context to that. So we'll keep it simple. So if you had a number 1,000, right? 1,000 is 1 times 10 to the third power. So in order to go up to 1,000,000, it's going to be 3 orders of magnitude up, right? So it's going to be 1 times 10 to the sixth power. And then to go up to 1,000,000,000, it's going to be 3 more orders of magnitude, right? So 1 times 10 to the ninth power.
Yep.
And then we're going to get to trillion. I'll leave you there at a trillion. 3 more orders of magnitude, 1 times 10 to the 12th power, right? And so when you see these, they're denotated exponentially, right? But you also have a metric prefix, right? And you're probably familiar with these things because 1,000,000, which is 10 to the sixth power, is denotated as mega. When you have 1,000,000,000, which is 10 to the ninth power, you have a giga. And then when you have a trillion, which is 10 to the 12th power, you have a tera, right? So we're all familiar with this stuff in regards to technology, megabytes, gigabytes, terabytes, right? And then you go up more, they have higher ones. So, like I said, people throw around the number of billion real casually. So we would like to get some context on a billion. And this is just something I found on the internet. I find it interesting. Someone asked the question, how long would it take to count to the number 1 billion? So they're saying, if you just counted, 1, 2, 3 per second, So to count to the number of billion, it would take you 31 years and 251 days. That's the count to a billion. So if somebody handed you $1 billion in $1 bills, and they wouldn't, it would always be in hundreds, but with just, an example, it would take you basically 32 years to count it. Okay, so that's a billion. Well, let's move it up 3 orders of magnitude. How long would it take you to count to a trillion? Well, 31,709 years. That's the number 1 trillion. So recently, and they had the stimulus package. It was $1.9 trillion stimulus package.
Yeah, big.
So basically 2 trillion. In order to count to 2 trillion, it would take you over 60,000 years. That's how large that number is.
I know.
If you counted 1 second every day, it would take you over 60,000 years to count to the number 2 trillion. And this is important because they throw these numbers around. So let's break it back down another way. Mm-hmm. So people are always out here. I hear this stuff, somebody might be a millionaire, and they say, oh, but you ain't no billionaire. I say, okay, so let's take the difference between a million and a billion. So do you want to say anything before I go into what that is? Okay, so a million to a billion. So if you were fortunate enough to figure out how to make $1 million, boom, you got there. We made it. Made $1 million. So you're like, the next goal is a billion. But what that is, you would have to make $1 million 1,000 times. Say that again, $1 million 1,000 times. So even if you had a business or your salary, your income was $1 million a year, and you say, okay, I get $1 million a year. How long would it take you to get to $1 billion? 1,000 years. So that's the order of magnitude how much larger a billion is than a million. Mm-hmm. And people just throw it around like, oh, well, I'm millions to billion. It's not that simple, right? So even if let's take it up 1 order of magnitude. If you made $10 million a year, right? You're some kind of, you great job, right? You make $10 million a year. Mm-hmm. Still would take you 100 years to make $1 billion. Mm-hmm. And we're just saying it very simply. That doesn't account for investing, things that appreciate over time and compound. We're just talking about straight up the money going and how long it would take to get there. Okay, so and if you made 100 million, another order of magnitude, it would take you 10 years to make it, right? So now you made it to a billionaire. Wow. Now they're talking about some of these people like Jeff Bezos and maybe Elon Musk might be the world's first trillionaires. Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing. You make $1 billion. You got 1 billion. That means you got to make $1 billion 1,000 times to get to a trillion. And that's how big that is. So to go from a million to a trillion, right? It's 1,000 times 1,000, right? You'd have to make $1 million 1 million times. So these are crazy numbers. They get out of whack because people just throw these numbers around and nobody says anything. If when you go and you're doing your research and you read, you always notice that if you read somewhere and they gotta say 1 billion, trillion, million, whatever number they want to use, they always write the word out.
Yes.
They never put the number because if you see the number a trillion,
it looks crazy. You gotta count it
and then especially if it doesn't have any commas, you're like, what number is that? It's so many zeros behind that. It's 10 to the 12th power, so it's a number with 12 zeros behind it, which is crazy. Now remember, it goes both ways, right? It goes for very large numbers and very small numbers, right? So, I'm sure you guys are familiar with stuff like, what would you say, like Avogadro's number or Planck's constant, right? These are very, very small numbers. So when you see Planck's constant, used in science, it is notated as 10 to the negative 34th power. Negative 34th power. And what that means is if you had to write that number on paper, you would have to put a decimal and you have to write 34 zeros before you got to your first significant number. And this is why it's denotated in formulas as H, right? It's because you can't write you can't have this whole formula out. You got to just put the H in there, right? And that's important too because that applies to Bitcoin. And you know how that applies to Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin is divisible. One of the things that makes Bitcoin great is divisible up to 8 decimal points, right? When you buy your Bitcoin, you go on your dashboard, it'll say your Satoshis, but if you want it in Bitcoin, it'll say point, whatever, 000 something, and then you'll have a number, right? It's divisible up to 8 decimal points. How many Satoshis does it take to get a Bitcoin? 100 million. So 100 million is 1 times 10 to the 8th power. So you're dealing in Satoshis, so you really, it is scientifically notated, right? Remember, 1 Bitcoin, that's the whole, that's the 1. But before you get to 1, you have Satoshis. So if you have 1 Satoshi, right, it'd be 1 times 10 to the 8th power. You have 1 Satoshi, and then once you get up to 100 million Satoshis, then the number becomes a whole number, because you would have 1, I said that wrong, it'd be 1 times 10 to the negative 8th, because you're 8 spots behind the decimal point. And that's just, people throw these numbers around very casually, and I think it throws people's perception off, right? People think, oh, I need to make $100,000 a year. People don't even know the $100,000 is, 100,000, the number is a very large number. But over the years, people have just, like, these numbers have just become
everyday speak.
Everyday speak. That's a great way to say it, because now you got billionaires, and it's just like, you can't be just a thousandaire, can you? It's not be just a thousandaire.
But if we're talking about context, understand that while you may not be a millionaire in the United States, there are a lot of countries where you may be considered a millionaire or a multimillionaire.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the title in other countries.
Well,
I'm getting there in the U.S., getting there, right? But the truth of the matter is, for energetic purposes, for ego, right? And I think it's good for the children too. Depending on what country or geographical area you are in, you could very well be a millionaire or multi-millionaire.
Well, and these numbers will scale on you very fast. We talk about, we spent time going back to Colombia. And so now, so they're it's called the COP, the Colombian peso. I don't know what it is today, but it's usually between 3,500 to 4,000 to 1. So $1 is about, we'll use 3,500 pesos to 1. So that's understandable. But what happens is it scales on you fairly quick, because if you go out to buy something that is $75, and then all of a sudden now you're dealing with very, very large numbers. And then now you start getting into, if you start going to, 500, you might just be paying your rent. Your rent's $500, but they want, you have to pay it in pesos. So now you got to go figure out how much, you got to do 3,500 times 500, and then you got to come up with all these pesos. And because it's equivalent, but it's still a lot of money. When I say a lot of money, it's a lot of money physically. Physically, you got a lot of money in your pocket. You can't put it all in your wallet. It's too much money to just have. Like, if you have $500, you got 5 bills in your wallet. Not over there. You got $500. You got like a little bag. You got a duffel bag full of cash.
Duffel bag boys.
So I'll tell a little story. I don't know if I told this story before, but I'll tell it again. I'll try to keep it short. I went to Colombia. I wanted to exchange $2,000.
It was 5, baby.
No, just 2. The other rest was deposit in the bank. So it's just 2. Okay. Yeah, 2. So
I didn't go on that trip.
$2,000, right? So I go to this place. It's in the middle of the mall. You couldn't exchange your money at the bank because I didn't have the right visa. So the lady, I went to talk to the bank. She said, but you can go to the mall. They have a cash exchange place. I said, all right, cool. I'm going over there. So I went down. This is downtown Medellin mall. So I'm walking through the mall. I found this place. So the place looks like a cash checking joint. Okay. So people in line mostly paying like cell phone bills, utility bills, this, that. But then over here, they have a window where you can exchange money. Nobody's in that line. So I'm going over there. So I don't know if people have ever exchanged money in another country, or, it might be different in other countries, but, you got to fill out this paperwork, show your passport, copy your passport, and a thumbprint, some other things. So once we get finished with all the paperwork, I just hand them $2,000. So it was $2,000, right? It was $2,000.
What was it for?
$2,100 bills. Now, small, and I had an envelope. Boom, I gave it to her, and so we were going to exchange it. Now, I have a poor habit of sometimes when I don't know what you ask me in Spanish and I finish my transaction, I'll always say no. So we had finished our transaction, thumbprint, signature, got my passport back, and she asked me a question. And it's a different dialect, so I didn't quite catch it, but I said, no. She said, okay. So then she started going and counting out the money. And I'm like, man, long story short, it was like bricks and bricks and bricks of money on the counter. I turn around, I'm looking, people in line looking at me like they eyeballing me. And I'm like, man. And to this day, the only thing that I can think that she asked me was, would you like large bills? And I said no. Because I was like, why is she giving me these little bills? But I think that's what she asked me. So, you know, you live and you learn.
Don't travel without your wife.
So now I got all this. So I got bricks and bricks and bricks and bricks of money on the counter. And I'm like, well, I got on the shirt and t-shirts. I said, so when am I supposed to do this money? So I asked the woman, can I have a bag? Something to carry it in. Went in the back, got me a clear garbage bag. I said, oh, God. So if you ever seen like Colombian pesos, they're real colorful and it's a clear bag. So I just said, you know what? Let me just get the hell out of here and see if I can get on home. So I put it all in the bag. I'm hustling through the mall. Like, let me get out of here. I'm going to go try to get a cab. I'm trying to cover it up. And so these guys, they're mall security. These guys carry like shotguns.
The M16s?
Yeah,
assault rifles. Like in every country.
Yeah, but these guys in the mall, dude ran up on me real quick. And he was talking real fast. And I know what he was saying because I was trying to catch it. And then he got on his mic and I'm like, oh, God. Because I can't really, like we talk about protect your wealth. I'm kind of out here like, oh, shit. And then the other two guys came up saying, security guards, whatever. And they escorted me out the building into like a taxi. So I gave a couple tips. Like, oh, thank you for helping me out. And then the taxi driver took me back to the condo.
That's who you gotta watch.
I'm like, because I still like I say I'm still not out of hot water.
He's gonna take you to a colonia somewhere and beat you over the head for all that money.
And then so he took me back to my building, and then he told me to wait right here. And he went in the building. We had armed security there. They came out and they escorted me all the way to my door. So, I gave everybody tips around, just handing out money. You get a car. But the long story short is the money can scale on you very fast, right? Because Colombia is not trying to tether their peso to the dollar. So they don't care what the exchange rate is. Mexico is 1-20. Your money, you have more money if you got $100, you have more pesos, you got about 2,000 pesos. That's a small scale, but you go some places with these large exchange rates and the money just, it scales. The numbers scale on you very quickly. And, people, like I said, they toss these numbers around. We talked about our good brother, Timothy.
Oh, yeah, that was
Timothy Reed.
Capital.
Yeah, Timothy Reed had $250,000 cash, which is getting close to 1 billion pesos, right? And that's why everybody knew. Like, so they're saying, like, you got 1 billion pesos in the bank? So, he became a target. We talk about that, moving your capital across nation states and borders quietly with Bitcoin and digital assets. But, that's the only thing I wanted to mention is people just throw these numbers around. We go over here, let's finish it out. You got $1 trillion. So that's about the highest number you'll hear in finance and economics, $1 trillion. Yeah, 10 to the 12th power. And then your next one up is quadrillion. So that's 3 orders of magnitude, 10 to the 15th power. And then after that, you know how it goes, quintillion, 10 to the 18th power. So you got a number with 18 zeros behind it. Then you got sextillion, it's 10 to the 21st power. And last one they have on our table is probably the last one you can use, septillion, 10 to the 24th power. Now, these numbers that get this large, you often see used in things like astronomy, astrophysics, cosmology, dealing with distances. You start using speed of light and distances like that. That's where you start using these larger numbers, not really in finance. I'm not familiar with the engineering because, and let me read this because what you have is, I forgot to read this. So what we were talking about is normalized notation, right? So everything I explained, you're going to use that formula M times 10 N, but they also have an engineering notation. I am not an engineer, so I don't know how notation is used in that regard. And I think one of the last things we want to talk about was significant figures. Did we talk about significant figures? We didn't? Okay. So, a significant figure is a digit and a number that adds to its precision. Wow, I like that. This includes all non-zero numbers, zeros between significant digits and zeros indicated to be significant, right? So, for example, you have zeros as placeholders, but once you have zeros trailing at the end of a number, they have become non-significant figures. I still teach chemistry courses and physics courses. And when you do the some of the problems and the formulas, I always say, 4 significant figures, right? You don't want the figure to go on forever and ever, right? When you see the number pi, it's typically notated as 3.14, right? That's 2 significant figures, but we all know that pi, as they say, can go on forever, right? So you don't need to keep writing the number over and over. So they want that down to 2 significant figures, and that's why I said sometimes with these smaller numbers, like I said with, was it Planck's constant, you got 34 zeros in front of the first significant figure. But you have to have those zeros because they're significant placeholders. So just wanted to do that. We don't want to have a physics or a math course. But what I will say, I'm going to say this. We're going to talk about Erin. She wants to do a show about, it's called Bitcoin and Zero, the number zero. Oh. And it's a really good
metaphysical show.
It's a good metaphysical show. It's a paper written by Robert Breedlove, and he breaks down the significance of Bitcoin and how it relates to the number zero. And that also will reach into sacred geometry. If you guys are familiar with sacred geometry, you have a placeholder. Well, zero before, if you go back in sacred geometry, there was no zero. And so we can talk about that, how zero was, I don't want to say it was discovered. I don't want to say invented, maybe invented, discovered. And then how it changed everything. And he explains the correlation of Bitcoin to zero. It's a really nice paper. I believe it's about 55 pages. Very technical, but I'm sure she would like to do that show. We bust out the sacred geometry book and talk about the correlation of Bitcoin and number zero and these placeholders. What I'm talking about, Rick, really is, strictly just kind of scientific and mathematical.
But zero was discovered to make the math more precise.
Yes, because like I said, you got to have what they say placeholders. So, that's just what we wanted to talk about as far as scientific notation. Just having some kind of perspective on the size of these numbers that people toss around casually. And I say billion is probably my biggest one because people say, oh, he's a billionaire. 1 times 10 to the 9th power, 32 years to count to a billion. I mean, that's how large that number is. And we're not even going to talk about, because I didn't even do the research. I mean, I don't have it pulled up right here, but we're not even going to talk about if you had $1 billion in $1 bills, the size of it. Like
the physical.
Like how much space it would actually take up. Yeah, mass depth. So, and how much it would weigh, right. And that's why they do it in $100 bills. So that would be 2 orders of magnitude down, but it still would take up a ton of space.
But we do want to take this one step up, and then we're going to let you guys go. I didn't think we needed to say it, but I think we do need to say it because there's a lot of people who are just uninformed that when we're hearing about these valuations, Rihanna's the youngest self-made billionaire. LeBron James just made $1 billion. Jeff Bezos,
Tiger Woods just became
Tiger Woods, Elon Musk. These are valuations, right? These are numbers on paper. It is their net worth in a sense, not to say that it's not accurate, but it's not liquid. That's the word I want to use.
Yeah, it's not.
And liquid. I don't know how easily they could liquidate it. For instance, I don't know how many of you know that Jay-Z and Beyonce have a mortgage on their mansion, right? That house is $50 million, $89 million. I can't remember, but it's somewhere between 50 and 90, let's just say, $1 million. You say to yourself, y'all got that? What y'all got a mortgage on the house for? And I'm not sure if it's a 15-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage. But the point is that they do have a mortgage like regular people have mortgages. So these are the little signals that should alert people to really understand when these big numbers are thrown around. I don't know if LeBron has a mortgage on his mansion. He likely might.
Well, the last one he did in Miami, because it was on the market for quite a while after he left.
Okay.
He couldn't sell it, and the problem is, who can afford to buy it?
There's that.
Because the people, like we keep saying, the people who can afford to buy it typically want their own custom built type of house, right? Michael Jordan's house is still sitting on the market.
Yeah.
And I mean, who can afford to buy it? The buyers who can is very slim. It's very slim.
Right.
And they want their own house. If I have to pay $30 million for a house, let me customize it the way I want, not buy something that was already built that somebody else had.
Yeah, let's build it from the ground up ourselves and so on and so forth. But the whole point of us, we were talking about the scientific notation because we did want to draw attention to the information that's being mirrored to you and the way it's perceived. We always want to give a great dose of reality. I said, if this wasn't assets and arbitrage, it would be called The Reality Show by the Simons.
And
go ahead, baby.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead, baby.
Well, I was going to just say also, because we are precious metals investors, the numbers on precious metals scale, and I think we've talked about this, but they scale. If you go over to the COMEX, right? The COMEX is the index where people can buy precious metal contracts. I believe it is, when you buy one contract, it is 5,100 ounce bars, right? So that's huge, because now you got to do 5,000 times 100, which is, so you add 2 zeros, so you would turn 50,000, 500,000 ounces of silver. So, and then now you have to have a place to store that. You have to be able to move it around. People typically don't ask for delivery when they buy that. They just sell the contract back and take the profit, right? The arbitrage. Now, if you stand for delivery, as it's called,
they're gonna be in trouble.
Well, then because if you bought 5 contracts and now you got 5,100 ounce bars times 5, and you stand for delivery, you got to have some place. You got to have a depository ready for that, or your own safe or something, and it's huge.
But
it's huge.
Because
the numbers scale quick.
People don't do that. That's why rehypothecation is so big in COMEX.
Yeah, because if people stood for delivery, you couldn't rehypothecate the silver and gold, especially silver. People don't rehypothecate gold as much. I mean, they do, but it's not as big as it is in the silver community, because they know that they're saying, what, for every ounce, it may 500, 1,000 times been sold over. So what that means is you own it, and 500 other people own that ounce, because they know you're not going to stand for delivery.
Like a timeshare.
Yeah, you're not going to stand for delivery, so we can just keep selling the same ounce to different people over and over. And that's the what you'll see if you're into silver. You see the manipulation in the COMEX by J.P. Morgan Chase. Man, we're just going to put that out there. Jamie Dimon and J.P. Morgan Chase manipulating the silver price. But the numbers scale fairly quickly on you. Gold is for the big dogs, because that's 5,100 ounce bars of gold. So, those are big dog plays right there.
Oh, so the gold is the same, even though it's
scaled up? Yeah, it's the same contract, So that's a big, that's like private wealth management funds, big, just high-end people in the gold. And because you can store a lot more value in gold. I mean, if you had that much wealth and you tried to buy silver, you would just have so much silver, so you want to get it, contracted down a little bit, just so you can keep an eye on it, make sure the volume. Yeah. But the numbers scale fairly quickly, because there's a gold to silver ratio. It basically says how many ounces of silver does it take for 1 ounce of gold. So right now, I haven't checked it, but it's probably anywhere between 65 and 75. So it just means if you had 75 ounces of silver, then you can buy 1 ounce of gold. So that's what is that? 75 times. You could keep 75 times more stored energy in 1 ounce of gold than you can in silver. And if you have a lot of wealth and you're trying to contract it and keep it smaller.
Actually, Bitcoin is the thing to do, because there's no volume.
Bitcoin is
there's no physical volume.
And Bitcoin becomes, it was, and I don't know if we talked about this or if we have to talk about it, but you have like the 4 or 5 principles of money. I mean, we understand that, but Bitcoin had optimized all the principles of money, right? And the main one, well, I mean, I don't want to say the main one, but what we're talking about, it optimized divisibility, right? And so it's more divisible, and it also optimized your ability to. It's portable, right? So it's more portable than any type of real money, right? And
optimized portability.
Yeah, as Bitcoin has been stated, it is. How would you say it? How has it been stated? Gold. So gold is the standard as money. So gold would be analog, and Bitcoin would be digital. And anytime you have something that goes from analog and you create something that's digital, it always it's better, right?
It optimizes.
It optimizes. It's just like something simple as for me that I use books. I love physical books. She loves physical books.
I love physical books.
But I have transferred my whole library to digital. It optimizes. I can just carry it around on my iPad, on my phone or something. I don't have to lug around 10,000, 5,000 books, right? Because books are heavy.
There's the energy in the paper because it was a tree and it was organic. So there's a certain energy to it. But when we're talking convenience, especially how we travel a lot,
but
just carry the iPad that's got 60 million books available to you versus
go on there and go on Amazon or something and buy a book. That digital book is usually, if not always, cheaper than that real book, the real physical book, right? Some of the books are out of print, but you can get them in digital. They've been scanned. I have them books, they're scanned. They're kind of hard to read. Some of the old books that's out of print, but yes, you will pay more for a physical book than a digital book. And that's something where you see something that was analog that's important that people value went to digital.
Right.
And then it has been streamlined. And it's easier to use.
Right.
So that's what Bitcoin is. We're still silver investors. It's just something that we always love. But
and there's an energy to silver as well. It comes from the earth. It's actually stardust. And we can talk about that in a metaphysical show about silver. So it does have an energy. It's antibacterial.
Colloidal silver.
So it's good for your health. Yep. It helps to... because everybody has magnetic poles. It kind of helps to just kind of get those magnetic poles back in order. So it has its utility. And I'm coming to the point now, it doesn't matter what it is. I know everybody says fiat is trash and stuff like that, but fiat money, even because it's going to zero, but even in its unoptimized state, it has its utility.
Yeah, it's
it's a tool. It's a resource. It is something you can use. It does get the job done with certain things that you just can't use the optimized asset for. Right now, it's getting better in the U.S. where you can use Bitcoin for, what would you call it? Like everyday
transactions,
coffee and stuff like that.
Oh, see, I don't know about that because I haven't.
It's getting better. I don't know how great it is, but it's better than like here where you can't do it at all. It's non-existent. But we want to get to the point, and I'm probably going to use this quote in as many shows as possible. The highest form of intellect is to observe without judgment, and just understand that even the thing that seems the most useless does have a utility, but you want to be strategic in its use.
Yeah, you have to understand its utility, what it is good for, right? For example, I watched a gentleman, he's a CEO of a silver mining company. It's not silver mining, he's a distributor. His name is Andy Scheckman. And he always talks about some of the things you need to have in your house and on hand, and talks about having a certain amount of cash on hand, right? Because we've seen in the epidemic, people couldn't get cash out the bank. All of a sudden, you want to go up there, I need $10,000. I want my $10,000. Like, well, sir.
They're rehypothecating
they're rehypothecating your money because, well, that's a whole nother show. But but have some money on deck, that you can lay your hands on. That's just part of your contingency plan. It's why we keep physical silver, keep some cash on deck, because, all of a sudden ATM doesn't have money, the bank doesn't have money, you can't get your hands on any cash.
Or something happened and the demand for cash has increased 500, 1,000%.
Yeah, and then now you don't.
Yeah.
So that's the utility of cash. Just being able to have it so that you can make transactions, simple transactions, just getting food, getting water. Because now if you don't have cash, and you start talking about bartering, right? So now you got to take out some of your your silver, your gold to go get some some food or some water. And these things happen. You remember what was that? Well, I don't remember what year it was. The blackouts in New York, like things come up.
The 70s?
No, remember the one? I think late 90s. The late 90s, that blackout.
I was in New York in the late 90s.
Yeah, it was a bad blackout. And you got stuff like Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah, hurricanes.
Hurricanes, they take out
earthquakes.
They take stuff out, man.
They take out infrastructure.
They take out infrastructure. We're down here. We have earthquakes, so sometimes
well, we are bad though.
No, we have access to what we need, but still, we used to live in Costa Rica in a small town in the jungle. They had one ATM in the town.
It was a mess.
So you go down there and you need some cash. ATMs is out of cash, out of order, something like that. You're like, man,
it's like that here too.
Yeah, like, man. But we had more than one ATM.
Yeah, we had more than one ATM.
Just had one.
But the problem is where we are is so heavy, cash heavy,
right?
That there's a lot of places your what? Your card?
Yeah,
that's like magic to them.
Yeah, two things. Yeah, two things. Your card, either people don't accept your card, and you will have smaller places that only accept cards from
national cards. Only cards from Mexico.
From Mexico. So
Visa means nothing.
Yeah, so you gotta it's part of the stuff you gotta figure out if you're gonna get out here in the world and travel and journey. But having cash, it has its benefits. Yeah. It has its benefits. I know people. I'm one of those people who say cash is trash. So, and when I say that, I just mean I don't just let a whole bunch of money sit in my bank account and get 25 basis points interest.
When I hear other people regurgitate these narratives, I'm understanding in casual conversation that you really do feel that way. So, we're hoping that the whole point of our show doesn't matter what the topic is about. It just helps to add a bit of context, whether that's historical context, scientific context, mathematical context, to information so that you can see the reality and not just listen to what people are saying. In the internet age, we are noticing more and more people are just regurgitating talking points. It's driving us crazy.
It drives her crazy.
Drives me nuts.
I always say there's nothing new under the sun.
So. I'm supposed to be observing the field as a scientist without judgment, but then I also understand the importance of adding a bit of context so that talking point is beneficial to you now. Because sometimes if you're just listening to a talking point being regurgitated, that can be detrimental to you if you just take that and run with it.
Right.
So that's what we're hoping the show is. I know some of these shows seem really, really technical, and they are, but it's adding the context needed to get to that next level of what it is that you're trying to do. The scientific notation, he talks to you about Bitcoin down to the Satoshis and just understanding why it's devised the way it's devised so that it can give you the most precise level of measurement. And, we used to do math in school. We didn't have real world applications for it. Simon Family Investment Ventures, Assets and Arbitrage, our show is all about real world application. Yep. It's all about what is this and how can I use it for my benefit? So we hope that is some of the things you guys are taking away from our show. If you love our show, the biggest favor you could do for us is just sharing the content, so that other people can also gain that context that they need so that they can begin their up-leveling. Yeah,
and she said something real important there. Measurement, right? Measurement. Money was supposed to be measured. It's supposed to be weighed. So if you have Bitcoin, something precise down to 8 digits behind a decimal point, that's giving you the most precise measurement, right? When you went and back in the day, gold was gold was the money, but silver was kind of like the precise measurement. You could call it change, right? Right. If you went out to buy something now with an ounce of gold, you know you couldn't get change back, so you would have to use silver, right? Because you could use silver in a more divisible and a more precise way. But Bitcoin is the most divisible because it has 8 digits behind. It has 8 digits behind the decimal point. So 100 million Satoshis equal 1 Bitcoin. But look how divisible that is. People don't even understand.
It's more divisible than the dollar.
I mean, they throw $100 million a number around. That's 10 to the eighth power. 1 times 10 to the eighth power is 100 million. So that's how divisible Bitcoin is. And, you know, I know people don't like to use it as money, but, you know, either or, the tenets of money and divisibility, Bitcoin maximize all the other things that have been used as money over time.
It's money 2.0.
Yeah, so it is, like we said, it is the digital version of something that's analog, right? You guys remember? I mean, you know, we all listen to music. What was the analog version? Was you had tapes, you had cassette tapes,
CDs,
records, CDs. And what happened?
Spotify.
I mean, that's what it is now. So, you know, that it just leveled up. It just leveled up to the digital version. Now, I don't have to have, I used to keep the CD things in my thing. They had like 250 CDs in my car. And then you kept the one on the visor. You had like the 10 and 20 in the visor. Now you just go to your Spotify or whatever you know.
We have 52 hours of music on one of our Spotify playlists.
Right. And so now you don't have to carry around all this stuff. You know, it makes it more streamlined. Now, I'm not saying it was great for the people involved, you know, like the artists and stuff like that. That's not my thing. I don't know. But I'm just telling you that
where the technology took it.
Yeah, once technology goes from analog to digital, it streamlines it and it makes it easier to use and move around, and of course, as I like to say, move across space and time. So, you know, Bitcoin is the digital version. They call it digital gold. A lot of people push back on that, but you know, the thing is, if you have to put your wealth into something and you don't want it to be so physical and you don't want people to even know that you have it, I mean, you know, then you can have this in a very digital form and you can move it wherever you need to move it without people knowing that you have it, and not, you know, having to get a whole bunch of people involved with securing some of your assets. But yeah, we just wanted to bring that scientific notation because, you know, the numbers, you know, the numbers are they're a little loose and fast with the numbers, but you got to see what they are and just have some kind of perspective and context of how large the numbers are. And yeah, that's it. We'll try to come, if you guys want, we'll do that Bitcoin to zero, sacred geometry kind of placeholder and the history of that, if that's something that people are interested in. If not, give us some show ideas. You know, we're open to ideas. Let us know what you think, you know, good, bad, or indifferent, and, you know, however you feel.
And please share our content.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you guys on Monday. So we'll see you then.